Hi everyone! If you're new here, my name is Jamie and I post lifestyle and finance related videos as well as vlogs on my channel every Sunday. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about my personal finance journey. This video is inspired by a comment from a viewer who asked me whether I was always money smart or whether I tweaked my budget as I got older. And I thought this was a really interesting topic where I could talk a little bit about my personal finance journey as well as share some resources with you that really helped me just become a little bit more educated in personal finance. So if you find this video helpful, please let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. Thinking back to early days, my personal money mindset was really influenced by my dad. My dad always talked to me about money and his focus was really about saving. So for instance, he would always tell me and my brothers about how he would save at least 50% of his income, which is wild for me to think about as an adult. So ever since I was young, I was ingrained with that lesson and that focus to always be saving money. I then felt like I really learned the power of $1 from the first few jobs that I had when I was around 16 or 17. One of my first few jobs was working at Kumon as a tutor in maths and English, teaching little kids and dealing with their parents. And at one point I was making $12 an hour, and that really shaped how I saw everything, like all my purchases. So for example, I remember after I got the job and I would treat myself to a bubble tea, which was like $4 at that time. I would think, wow, this one bubble tea was 20 minutes of my work at Kumon. I was also private tutoring on the side, and I was starting to look at purchases and looking at items from the lens of how much does this cost relative to how much I'm making. I think those first few jobs were really helpful in shaping my money mindset because I was really grasping, work equals money, which I know is very obvious, but at an early age, I was learning the value of $1. So because I was so aware of every dollar and because I was so focused on saving, ever since I was in uni and in undergrad, I had always kept track of every dollar that I spent. I always just felt uncomfortable not knowing where my money was going. Like, I was bringing in some pay from my part-time job, so I wanted to keep track of how I was spending it. I was also going through phases of money anxiety where if I received an unexpected bill or if there was any unexpected expense, that would really stress me out because I planned things out and I budgeted everything. So when something unexpected happened, it just really threw me off track, and I hated seeing like money coming out of my account that I hadn't planned for. So that was something I definitely had to work through. I'll give you an example of when that money anxiety really came to the surface. So I was living with a housemate at the time, and we had racked up an enormous electricity bill that I had not accounted for. I was extremely upset because we both knew that it was because of an appliance that my housemate was using, which was extremely energy inefficient. So at the time, I also didn't have an emergency fund saved up yet. And it really affected me. I was so upset and I was so angry, and I just hated having to pay for this bill that I hadn't budgeted for, and it was just enormous. So I kind of had to take a step back and think about, how can I avoid the situation, because there are definitely going to be times where things like this pop up. And so my goal of having an emergency fund kind of popped up in my life. And another step that I took was to think about how I can have a little buffer amount in my rent and bills fund. So those are two positive outcomes that came from that situation. So a huge desire to have this emergency fund to give me peace of mind and security, and to have a little buffered up rent and bills fund that I could draw on as well in case another unexpected bill pops up, because in my mind, a huge electricity bill is not necessarily an emergency. But anyway, speaking of my emergency fund, that was probably my first key money goal. And when I met that goal, it was my first, major money milestone. So I decided, for someone who is super risk adverse, I needed 6 months of my money set aside in case of emergency to be able to sleep peacefully at night. I don't know if you can relate to this or if you think that's a little bit extreme, but 6 months is where I landed on, where I put away, my regular salary so I could be out of a job for 6 months and still be able to pay the bills, and I would be okay. And hopefully that would also be enough time for me to find a new job. Now, as I was working towards achieving that goal of saving up that emergency fund and bringing in more money in my full-time job, I wanted to educate myself more and become a little bit more knowledgeable in the personal finance area. I started reading books like The Barefoot Investor. This book is the reason why I have a Splurge account. It's why I have automatic transfers going into my savings account. It's why I changed banks. That was a big one. And also why I still have regular money dates with my partner. I found the book really interesting, and it presented a lot of topics in a non-intimidating way, which was important to me. And so it inspired me to just get more into those personal finance books and podcasts. If you are a bit of a beginner, I would definitely recommend Barefoot Investor. I also read She's on the Money, and I discovered this book because I was listening to her podcast, which is amazing. So when going through these resources, I was also thinking about how I could integrate money goals and budgeting in a way where I would actually enjoy it and where I wouldn't feel like I was restricting myself. And I'm a very goals-oriented person, so a concept that I really liked that was introduced to me in The Barefoot Investor was the idea of sinking funds. And that is definitely how I achieve all of my longer term goals. So if you've seen my previous budgeting videos, you'll see, a portion of my salary automatically gets transferred to whatever long-term money goal I'm going after. So for example, with the wedding fund, I had a goal in mind and clear reason behind it. I was able to sacrifice the other smaller expenses in my budget. For example, eating out, going to the movies, going to shows, like all of that. I was like, it's okay if I, cut back on that, because my number one priority at that time was hitting my wedding fund goal. I guess that mindset really allowed me to not see cutting back on the smaller expenses as a sacrifice. It was more like those actions were supporting me to achieve that longer term goal. So that's something I have recommended in the past, like having a real clear reason as to why you have these money goals and what's driving you behind these goals, because if that's not clear, it's very easy to keep, like going into your savings for like an emergency outfit or an emergency dinner. It's very easy to do that unless you're really driven by a bigger goal in mind. So that kind of thinking led me to kind of take a step back and think about it more from a big picture lens. So why does building wealth and making money, why is that important to me? What does that mean to me? My view is that money really buys me freedom. It buys me choices, it buys me options. Other things that I've had to work through is my previous, obsession with saving. It makes sense to me now that that was my mindset, because I'm such a risk-averse person. I had that money anxiety. I was brought up thinking that you have to just save. I kind of had to shift my perspective from that to understanding the importance of investing and how hoarding cash doesn't actually build a lot of wealth in the long term. So I started picking up resources like Get Started Investing and Sort Out Your Money and Get Invested, and listening to podcasts that also talk about investing like Millennial Money. So as a recap, I think in this video, I've kind of tracked my personal journey from the early influences on my money mindset to shifting my obsession with saving money to investing. And I guess present day, currently, I think my two key money mindset challenges are firstly, lifestyle inflation, and secondly, balancing between being frugal and achieving my money goals without being too frugal where I miss out on life experiences. So those are the two challenges right now, and I will wrap it up there. I just want to close it off by saying that personal finance is obviously a huge topic on my channel, and I think it is important to talk openly about money because I think we don't do it as much. We're not educated as much about it when we're younger. I think it's very important to have these conversations so we can learn more and educate ourselves about personal finance so we are all able to build our own wealth. As I said, for me, money means freedom and options and choices. So if I'm able to in some way be helpful to your personal finance journey, for me that is extremely rewarding. So I really hope you found this video helpful. Please let me know in the comments what you think, how you're going with your own personal finance journey, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!